The previous video, we talked about setting up a seller template. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to fill out some of these forms with some basic information. Let's get started. Here within our template that we created, let's click on the first form. Again, this is using zip forms and Texas specific forms. This is a form from the Texas Association of Realtors, and we're putting in some basic information. So the seller, you wouldn't know because you're going to use this template for multiple sellers, and then you put in their information there. For your office, you put in your office information and fill it out as best you can. And so going on to the property, again, this is a variable. Depending on the property, you put in the lot and block information about the property right there. Is it in an HOA or not, a homeowners association subdivision or not? You select yes or no. Yes, it is, or it is not. The listing price is also variable. It would be based on your discussion with the seller. The term would be when your listing starts and when it ends. It has to have a start date. It has to have an end date. So you fill that information as needed. Your broker fees are totally negotiable, and so you fill your information in there, whatever is agreed between you and the seller. We're just looking at spaces where we can put in things that are more permanent, so to speak, that are not typically what you would change in, every listing. So one of those things could be the protection period. You might say, I want 90 days after the listing. You might say 30 days, 60 days, what have you. Check with your broker on whatever they suggest you put as a protection period. And then we go on from there. Also check with your broker about what county to put in here for payments. Typically, we are going to file it with the MLS, so I'll check yes, that it will be filed in the MLS, one or more MLS, it will be filed in. So I'll check that. Typically, I don't have the seller saying don't file it on the MLS, but if they do, then you would change that. Also, scheduling company, if you have a scheduling company, this is where you would put their information, and whatever company you use, usually you're going to use that for every listing. Doesn't change from listing to listing unless you're using multiple companies, and that's the case. But if you have one particular one, you could put them in here. And usually we are authorized to put a lockbox at the property. So that's an is authorized to place a lockbox. Intermediary, typically the seller would allow for my broker to have both me, the listing agent, and another agent at the same office as the buyer's agent. In that case, we would be filling out another form, which is the intermediary disclosure notice that we'll provide to all parties, letting them know I am assigned to the seller and the other agent is assigned to the buyer in the transaction. If the seller does not want the listing to be displayed on the MLS or doesn't want the address to be displayed, this is when we'll check these off, but typically they do want these shown on the internet so that we can market the listing. Enyinna, quiet. Also, typically we are able to sell with a conventional loan, case by case. You might be able to get a VA or FHA loan on the property, depending on the property condition. Cash is usually across the board accepted. If any of these other financing types apply, then you would check that off. Otherwise, mostly those are case by case if you're sure that any of these apply. Seller being delinquent, if that's the case, you'll put that information here. They don't have any loans. Um, there's a space to disclose if the seller is delinquent on any liens on the property or anything to do with the property. You can put that there. And a lot of times they are not, but if that's the case, then that's where you put it in. The seller is not aware of any liens or encumbrances on the property except, and you put whatever they're aware of. Usually there is a mortgage, and you may not even include that on everyone because they might be paid off. If this sale involves a relocation company or an employer, you can put that information there. Very important if the seller is aware that the property is in a public improvement district, a PID, or municipal utility district, or other districts that should be disclosed. You put that information there. So that's case by case. We scroll on down. Usually special provisions. We don't have anything that we put in there unless there's some agreement between you and the seller that needs to go in there that's not covered in any of the other clauses of the agreement. Then you put that in there. Information about brokerage services is required on all the transactions. The seller's disclosure notice may or may not be required depending on the type of sale it is, if it's a multifamily or certain other single family sale types don't require the seller's disclosure, like foreclosure homes and different types of, so you check with your broker on whether or not it's required. Just a general typical owner selling a home, sell a single family, usually that's required, but again, it's case by case. We're almost done. If the seller is a foreign national, you disclose that here. And that's it. Again, this is just a brief overview of typical things that you might see in your listing agreement that might be constant for most of your listings, but it's highly subjective. You know, the things that you put in here could be highly subjective to the particular listing that you're working with. So always verify with your broker just to be sure. Next form we're looking at is the information about brokerage services. For this form, you're putting in contact information, license information for yourself and for your broker. So you put in the broker name and just follow the instructions and fill out all the blanks. You can also upload a form, assuming you have maybe an information about brokerage service form already filled out. You can say add document, browse for that document or wherever you have it, and add it into your template. The seller's authorization to release certain information, that's a new form, so please check with your broker on how to fill this one out. The seller's disclosure on lead paint. This applies to any property that's built before 1978. So it may not be used on any property that's built 1978 and newer. And so you're finding out from the seller, do they have any lead paint forms? Do they know about any lead paint? And then you fill it out accordingly for the seller's section. And then when you have a buyer there to fill out the buyer section. The wire fraud is basically a disclosure. Check with your broker if they have a particular wire fraud they want you to use. There's nothing really to fill out here except the signature blocks. So just filling out at the bottom who's to sign. The seller's disclosure notice, there are different forms for this. There is the Texas Association of Realtor Seller's Disclosure Notice, and there is also the TREC, Texas Real Estate Commission form. So check with your broker on which one to use. The one from Texas Association of Realtors is this one. It's 7 pages long. It has a lot of detail, spaces for the seller to disclose a bunch of information to provide to the buyer. On this form, many times people forget to initial the very last page because it has the signature blocks here, the page before the last for the seller, and then the last page has the signature block for the buyer, and it also has an initial space for the seller. So don't forget to have that filled out by the seller. Initialed. This is the other one, the one from TREC. It's a 4-page form. Also has information for the seller to provide what is in the property and details about the property. This one does not require initialing on each page, just signatures at the last page. Then here we have the information about on-site sewer facility. And this is a lot of information you would get from the seller. It's similar to the seller's disclosure, but specific to the septic system. And so you get all of that information from the seller. You would either send this form to them for them to fill out on zip forms themselves, or you could send it to them as a PDF. There are different ways to send it to them, either electronic or as a PDF, and they can fill it out. And the other form is just an addendum regarding the listing, just in case the listing has been on the market for a while and you want to make a price correction or price adjustment. This is where you go to fill that out, effective what date. So you put in whatever date that change is going to be effective. And assuming we're doing a price adjustment, we go here and check off listing price in paragraph 3 is changed to X amount, and we put it in there. Or maybe you're extending the listing expiration date. So it no longer ends at the end of this month, it ends at a different date, and you put that information in here. So whatever changes that you are making, it might be a broker fee change, it could be a different information, different things that you could change here using this form, changing on the listing. We're almost done. The T47 form. This is the T47 residential real property affidavit. So it's talking about it goes with the survey and it's talking about any changes that the seller has made after doing the survey. And so they just read through this, fill out the information, identifying the property and specifying if they've made any changes after they've bought the property. So have them read through. It's important that you read through all these forms yourself. Many brokers have trainings, in-depth trainings on these forms. Avail yourself of those trainings just so you know what these forms say and how best to fill it out. Again, this is just in a nutshell what you would typically see in a seller template and how to fill out the forms and fill in some of the blanks. This form has to be signed in front of a notary. Seller's estimated net proceeds. This form is useful so that the seller can see what their estimated being the big, the big word here, just estimated net proceeds. If you're not sure about the different fees that are associated with the seller's closing costs, you might want to have a title company prepare this and just ask them to provide you with an estimated closing cost disclosure given X price, assuming you go under contract at whatever price and you close at 30 days from that time with X amount in commissions, what would be our estimated net proceeds for the seller? And many title companies would be happy to provide you with an estimated closing disclosure. Some of them even have apps that you can use to do this that have already pre-filled numbers in some of these fields so that you can be more sure of the accuracy of numbers you're using to generate the net proceeds to your seller. The last form we have here is the residential data input form. Now, this form is useful in gathering information if you'd like to get a lot of detail about the property so that when you're putting it into the MLS, you have all this information right at your fingertips. You can use this form. It's not required. It's just a handy dandy tool that you can use if you like. A lot of the information you might also find in the seller's disclosure. You might have a lot of the information also when you walk through the property and just take notes for yourself. But this is something handy dandy you can use as well. It has 22 pages, so a whole lot of information here where you can gather a lot of the characteristics of the property, information about the bedrooms, what type of flooring, and this and that. So that in a nutshell are the different forms in the seller's template, how to fill them out with some basic information. As always, make sure to check with your broker about any additional forms. Again, many brokers would have an affiliated business disclosure form, and they may also have other forms that they would like you to include in your seller packet, and also check with them about everything that needs to be filled out in these forms to be sure that what you're filling out complies with your brokerage. Happy selling.